one of the biggest problems we see, at least with on the physician side, is that any other kind of disease that you have, you always get a quantitative test. So if you have heart disease or high cholesterol, you get that blood panel back, right, with concrete numbers on it. And if it's diabetes, it might be A1C, it might be glucose. But for musculoskeletal disorders, it's always in either an X-ray or an MRI, which is considered a qualitative.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Founders in LA podcast. I'm your host Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine a spotlight through a product lens on some of the exceptional founders we have as part of the LA community in an unedited, one-take organic conversation. With us today in the studio is Rebecca Zheng. Thanks so much for coming down, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Really excited for this one. But first, a word from our sponsors. Founders in LA is brought to you by Nearshore. Nearshore is a trailblazer in nearshore outsourcing and staff augmentation. With over 15 years of experience offering exceptional Latin American software development, data, product, and design talent for U.S. projects, Nearshore has revolutionized the way that companies scale their teams. They stand apart with 50% female leadership, are trusted by companies large and small, and have been helping U.S. customers grow since before nearshoring was cool. Discover how Nearshore can power your tech goals and help you stay lean while scaling fast. Learn more at www.nearshore.com. That's www.nearsure.com. We're also brought to you by United Club. United Club is a co-working space that sets itself apart. With locations in El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, and Hermosa, United is where creativity flourishes. Unlike traditional offices, they provide an inspiring environment where ideas can thrive and businesses can grow. With United, there's no hidden fees, flexible terms, options for dedicated offices, and unlimited access to conference rooms, a photo studio, this podcast studio, plus standard 3D printers, and 24/7 access at any of their locations. They're local champions who support neighborhood businesses, open their event spaces to nonprofits, and celebrate art, music, and culture. Join United Club and experience co-working like never before. Learn more at www.unita.club. That's www.unita.club. Our guest today is Rebecca Zheng. She's the founder and CEO of Calcu. Rebecca, can you just give us a 30-second description of Calcu?
Yeah, absolutely. So we make both the medical device and the diagnostic testing for patients with musculoskeletal disorders. So that could mean knee pain, including like ACL injuries, IT band injuries, patella tendonitis, or more commonly like lower back pain, similar to sciatica or herniated disc.
So tell me more. Living in Southern California, there's no shortage of folks with sciatica and herniated discs. How does, and we have a device right here. Tell us more about how the device helps those folks.
Yeah, so in a regular kit, it comes with 4 of these devices. And let's say you have back pain or knee pain, you go to your physician and they order you a set of Calcu tests. And a medical assistant likely will be putting these on affected areas. So if it's knee pain, then we put it up and down of the knee and then on the opposite side as well. If it's back pain, we usually put it around the hips and also on the legs. So they wear these sensors, like similar to a continuous glucose monitor, for about 24 to 48 hours outside of the clinic. Then they return the sensors back to their doctors. And 5 days later, we give them a complete analysis of like, hey, what is your symmetry like? For people with sciatica specifically, it usually is because of a contralateral pelvic drop. That's just a fancy word for saying like, hey, when you're standing, you're leaning on one side of your body versus the other side. Or when you're sitting, you're putting more pressure on, let's say, this butt cheek versus the other one, which all causes compression in that area.
Wow,
does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
And maybe I do have a herniated disc, so I have to do stretches every single day for years, unfortunately. So I maybe have a unique perspective of it.
Yeah.
So it's like a Band-Aid, like there's adhesive on the back.
Yep.
And you actually put it on your skin itself, and I guess can you tell us more about how the tracking is done? So it's multiple sensors along a couple body parts along a line?
Yeah, so we've only done case studies for herniated disc and patella tendonitis before. So I'll talk more about those cases where for knee in this case is we put one on your thigh kind of right above your knee, one below your knee, and then another one on the thigh on the other side of your leg. So the normal side of your leg, and another one near your pelvic bone. So we see how your entire core is doing as well. So there's sensors in it, there's a battery in this, and we have a mobile app that lets you connect to these sensors. It collects data, it gets into the cloud. Then we do all of the back-end processing of like, what is your symmetry, right versus left? What is your quad versus hamstring strength? Could that be a contributor to your knee pain? And we also say like, what is your flexion in your knee when you're landing? That doesn't just mean jumping. It could mean if you're just walking and there's a bending motion when you're hitting the ground. If your leg is too straight, that is a lot of stress for your knees. So that's another part of it. We also do the contralateral pelvic drop, meaning like throughout the day, are you putting more pressure on one side of your body versus the other one? Some other stuff like eccentric. So if you're sitting into a chair, can you control your body? We have a good bit of older population after the pivot. So we also measure like how fast they're sitting down, or if they're taking a load when we do a squat test, are they just dropping to the bottom, or are they controlling themselves and putting themselves in a like lower position along with gravity.
Right. Wow. So you're using sensors that adhere to the body, and you're able to take the data from a couple days of sitting and standing of your normal routine. So I guess traditionally, instead of going to a doctor and complaining about something and then having to try to imagine what you're doing, or maybe taking measurements while you're in the office, you are allowing folks to take the sensors, take the data analysis with them when they leave the office, just go about their daily routines, and then the sensors are providing data, and because there's multiple of them, they're kind of like daisy chain identifying, hey, here's how you're actually moving, here's actually how the weight is shifting, and because it's attached to your body, it's giving you a pretty accurate count or a count of how you are actually moving and resting, I guess, and the angles from which you do it. A person with back pain, I know that when I sit in a chair, sometimes I do like lean to one side or another, and you guys would be paying attention to that and then go back and provide data.
Yeah. So one of the biggest problems we see, at least on the physician side, is that any other kind of disease that you have, you always get a quantitative test. So if you have heart disease or high cholesterol, you get that blood panel back, right, with concrete numbers on it. And if it's diabetes, it might be A1C, it might be glucose. But for musculoskeletal disorders, it's always in either an X-ray or an MRI, which is considered a qualitative imaging. So it also depends on the skills of the physician that you're at for them to interpret what exactly is in the image. And so that doesn't tell you like what of your daily habits, and 67% of people with something that's going on with their joints and their muscles, it's because of a daily habit or wear and tear, versus like, I mean, if you got hit by a truck, then we're not the person to be like, hey, this is what's going on, right? So really getting them to pinpoint exactly what's wrong with the patient will be very important. And we currently don't have that, unfortunately.
This is great. This reminds me of another guest of the show we had recently, that Lubu, who have put sensors in the foot, and that they're helping with, foot placement and gait analysis to identify, impact of strides. But your guys are going directly on the body as well. And so in addition to that, you're looking at different, you're looking at sciatica, you're looking at herniated disc. And so can you tell us more about the trend in terms of using wearable technology in novel ways to better attack, I guess maybe to your point, areas in which there was no quantitative data before that?
Yeah, I think I love the trend of just people getting more quantified, right? I have an Oura Ring, I'm wearing an Apple Watch, and I do believe that in the future we're going to get on the more wearable side of things. But it's also like adjacent to our pivot, we decided to go more of the healthcare route instead of direct to consumer. We were doing direct to consumer, and I think the last time we talked, we were still making sensor embedded clothing for people to track their workout form. We've seen a couple of companies in the space that unfortunately went out of business that were targeting both pro sports teams, military, and also direct to consumers. I think, at least for us, there's a big friction with, hey, if we have all these sensors in the clothes and most people change their clothes every single day, there's a big part of like, you need to take them out, you need to charge them. The next day, you need to put them back into another set of clothes. There's a big habit formation that needs to be done. And I think there's a lot of friction there, at least for us. If it's something that's maybe in the shoes, that's a lot easier, right? Potentially you have like a shoe stand that you just put it there and it charges, and next day you just wear it to go. But just the direct-to-consumer kind of space, and this is very personal with what we realized in the pivot is, there are companies that's in the healthcare space, 23andMe, they were designed to like see if you're at risk for a certain type of cancer. They did the consumer route, and their valuation went from, I think, $3 billion to recently, I think it's either 200 or $300 million. They've already IPO'd. But different companies that are more in the medical device space, like Dexcom for continuous glucose monitors, which is also a lot of consumer companies use them, right? They've been around for a long time. They make, I think, $3 billion in revenue every single year. They're worth $50 billion. So that's why we decided to go more of the healthcare route. We don't have the direct-to-consumer code cracked on it, but whoever does it, I'm so glad that it's something that's accessible to every person, basically.
That's great, and thanks for sharing. What several of our listeners are early stage startup folks or thinking about getting into it. Would you mind just double clicking into the decision to pivot and like how you guys came about that? Because I think that those are tough decisions to make, and I think it's different for everyone. But it's always helpful to hear, hey, when did you guys decide? Because it seems like you're on a good path with the medical device.
Thank you. Hopefully so. We decided to pivot maybe a little over a month ago, and to boil everything down, it's a poor problem solution fit. So when we saw the problem, and a lot of wearables in the space see the same problem, is that more than 50% of our adults have a musculoskeletal disorder. And MSK disorders actually is the highest US healthcare spend. It's at $420 billion. It surpasses diabetes, which is, I think, around $310 billion, and cardiovascular, which is around, I think, $320 billion. So it's in the super high cost area and affects a lot of people. And our solution of like focusing on people that work out and track their workout form, they're likely in the healthy range of people. So I think there's a poor problem solution fit there. But the moment that happened was I was processing one of our users' data. The previous week, I processed his seated leg curls. I think it's the hamstring exercise where you curl your leg on the machine and your hamstring gets tight, and then you exercise that muscle. Right. That was a lot of effort for that. We don't have all of the data processing automated just yet. And the week after, I was processing his lying leg curls, which is similar exercise, but you're lying down. And that was completely different for our software. And that was the moment where I was like, this is not very scalable. If it's like this in weightlifting, how are we going to expand to walking, to tennis, to anything else, right? Every single set of sports is 100 different exercises within it. Like tennis, it could be like a regular swing, it could be a backhand swing, that's different.
Right.
So we realized that it wasn't very scalable. It doesn't get to the problem that a lot of people are suffering in pain in the more like potentially older population. It doesn't translate very well.
Did you think you start off? Did you think you start a company? Like, how did you find yourself very, very passionate about the problem space of helping people, in their physical health improve using data and analytics? Is that something you anticipated doing when you were growing up, or like, how did you find yourself being a founder of a company?
Yeah, did not think about that when I was growing up. I had a herniated disc when I was 17, which I feel like is on the very young end
That is
of
young, yeah.
getting a herniated disc. That's what the MRI said, but it did go away. It like had it got a lot better throughout time. And throughout college, I did competitive boxing at Georgia Tech. I had a personal trainer. I had two, actually. I saw physical therapists. I saw chiropractors. I was still getting like knee pain, shoulder pain, thoracic pain, like pain everywhere that I couldn't really figure out like why is it happening. Then I joined a research lab that was focusing on human like wearable robotics, similar to exoskeleton that you see in the movies. It helps people walk. That's how everything got started. I was like, okay, I think there are things that we can quantify in this space, and to help people better understand why they might be in pain and how they can improve much, much faster than just being like thrown into PT by a doctor and be like, hey, do physical therapy for 6 weeks and let's see if you're getting any better. That creates a very low conviction with the patient to get better. It's like, yeah, if someone has diabetes, you're just like, hey, don't drink the orange juice for an entire year and let's see what's going on. Right. That doesn't create a lot of conviction in them or motivation for them to get better.
Did you say it's awesome that the founder market fit is so key to creating early stage startups, and your background being at Georgia Tech around these ways to calculate and you quantify the movements and the importance of that, and then your background in boxing and injuries, it's super aligned. Was that helpful in trying to get your first customers, or how did you get it, I guess, pre-pivot? And since the pivot's still relatively new, are you looking to carry over some of those customers, and how are you approaching getting your new first customers?
Yeah. So I'll talk more about after the pivot. It's a lot more direct sales. So if you look at the movies with like pharmaceutical sales, they go into the office, they get kicked out, and then they try to talk to someone. That's how we're approaching it right now. There's a lot of cold emailing, a lot of going to physicians' offices. It's not so bad so far. We're very early into it. A lot of it is done through email. Some people are interested, some people are not. It helps that we're targeting, especially in LA, there are a lot of concierge doctors. There are a lot of luxury physical therapy clinics that don't take insurances. And there are some high-profile physical medicine and rehab doctors in this space as well. So I think it's lucky to be in LA where, not a lot of people rely on insurance to seek high quality care. That helps. And before the pivot, all of our 4 paying users, they came from inbound. So either they reached out to me on LinkedIn because they saw something I posted, or through email. But the wait list that we had, it was a lot of me just reaching out to people that I thought like, hey, you might have an injury, you did sports in college, from their LinkedIn profile. Yeah. There's some stalking going on with that. But
it's customer research. It's not stalking. It's
lead generation. Research. It's customer research. Yeah.
That's great. So right now you guys are pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, which we've seen work as the way for it, and that helps. That's the part that keeps the company going. We've heard from folks who, one was a former guy who went door to door selling cell phones, another one did nice. Grew up doing lemonade stands and found out that sales is one of the key roles in the CEO throughout the company. Even after you find the fit, then you're still in that role of trying to find it. So honing that skill, it sounds like you guys have already did that pre-pivot, and then find a way to get in front of the right people. And what's next right now? So it's still early on, and I realized I didn't really describe the device itself. It's about the size of basically the size of your thumb, and it's a medical device. It feels like it's on the back of a it's like almost like an old school keychain, but very small, or key fob for your car, about the size of your thumb, on a kind of bandage like background, so it adheres to your skin. What's next for Calcu? What are you guys looking at?
We are going to do a clinical trial to say that, like, hey, many steroid injections in your bones, and the surveys on quality of life, right? Maybe you are at a level 8 of pain and we get to take it down to 2. So hopefully we get that done within the next 6 months, because we do want to get embedded into the healthcare system, and a clinical trial is very essential in that sense. And finding more doctors that are willing to do a pilot with us, just the more case studies that we have, the more informed we're going to be going into a clinical trial. But yeah.
That's great. And we love to ground this in Los Angeles, being founders in LA. Can you share with us your most LA moment?
We talked about this before. It's probably when I got the Costco Universal Pass, annual pass. If anyone doesn't know, they sell those for a lot cheaper. I go pretty often. There's like a subway line from Hollywood to Universal. That's just like one stop.
Right.
Very, very convenient. That's one part. I've seen some celebrities in coffee shops, never really talked to them. So wouldn't really count those, but
I would definitely count those. You just walk into the shop and all of a sudden it's like there's Rambo sitting at the coffee table right there. That's pretty sweet.
Like, you see the Netflix characters come into life when they're walking around, and you're just like, oh, is that the person that I think it is?
Or you're like, I often like can't put it together very quickly, so you're like, oh, I recognize that person. Is that person from high school, or is that do I know that person? Like, no, they actually just play a character I watch. I don't know them at all. Well, that's awesome. And how can people find Calcu?
On LinkedIn, you can search Rebecca Zheng. You can go to calcu.tech. Either of those work. We're more active on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And we'll have to have you back on in 6 months, and we'll talk about the clinical trials and what's next.
Yeah. That sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our sponsors again, Nearsure and Unita and ProdHub.ai. You can build better products with ProdHub.ai, where innovation meets efficiency. Automate your PRDs, fast track your story creation, and speed up your product team with a single platform. It's your co-pilot for product management. Discover how at ProdHub.ai. That's PRODHUB.ai. I'd like to thank you again for listening to us, and if you like what you hear, please smash that subscribe button. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Founders in LA.